Hello everybody, this is Tyler here once again from the Character Workshop, and ignore that noise in the background. I now finally have my air conditioner set up this summer, so thank God, because otherwise, in the words of Bananarama, it would have been a pretty cruel summer for me. Anyways, so for today's episode, if you guys have watched It Came From England for the past 2 years, you guys have known I'm a huge fan of Doctor Who. I've done several episodes talking about it, talking about each era of the show as of right now. I've done other things, like I've talked about Canine and Company in one episode. I've even brought it up a few times, like I know, a bit of a spoiler in one of my top 5 videos, the saddest moments from British pop culture, a moment from the Modern Who series was mentioned in there. But, finally, after dozens and dozens of episodes, I'm now finally going to be doing an actual review of one of the show's stories. And what better way to start off than start off with the very first one in Unearthly Child. Now, I do have the beginning DVD box sets, which basically features the first 3 classic Doctor Who stories in Unearthly Child, The Daleks, and Edge of Destruction. So, I think it would be very fitting to start off with reviewing an Unearthly Child. And this will be kind of a recurring thing I'll be doing every now and then on The Came From England. I'll just be reviewing a story from Doctor Who. And, yeah. Without that being said, let's get started reviewing pretty much the story that started it all in Unearthly Child. Now, the story of An Unearthly Child starts off in 1963 on Earth, where science teacher Ian Chesterton and history teacher Barbara Wright suspect something pretty weird going on with one of their students named Susan Foreman. So, in order to find more answers as to what's up with Susan, Ian and Barbara decide to spy on her. So they decide to go to where she's supposed to live, which turns out to be a junkyard, which confuses both Ian and Barbara. And they noticed Susan was going in, and they followed her into the junkyard. Which, now that I think about it, does anybody else think it's a little bit weird that, like, her teachers are, like, following her and spying on her? I mean, then again, this is, like, 1963, so I can't really say much about that. Meanwhile, as Ian and Barbara were investigating the junkyard, they hear Susan's voice inside a police box. They assume that she was in there, while in the meantime, an old man arrives but refuses to let both of the teachers inside the police box. They eventually force themselves into the police box, realizing that the police box was bigger on the inside than it was on the outside, which confuses the both of them. Susan then explains to both Ian and Barbara that what they're inside is a time machine, which they refer to as the TARDIS, which was an acronym for Time and Relative Dimension in Space. And she also revealed that the old man that they were talking to beforehand was her grandfather. And of course, the old man himself reveals that he and Susan were both exiled from their own planets. Refusing to let Ian and Barbara leave the TARDIS, the old man then messes with the controls of the council, and everybody ends up going back into the past, way back to the Stone Ages. During the Stone Age, a caveman by the name of Za, who is a leader of a Paleolithic tribe, tries to make fire, while a cave woman by the name of Her warns him that if he fails to make fire, then a stranger by the name of Kal would be the leader of their tribe. And elsewhere, our heroes leave the TARDIS, and Ian and Barbara realize that they're actually back in time, and trying to, cope with the fact that they're no longer in 1963. And this is at the point of the story where we finally figure out that the old man character is basically referred to as the Doctor, and Ian and Barbara were questioning, like, what his last name was, with Ian saying if we would have known his last name, then we would have had an answer to, like, what's going on with all this time travel stuff. In the meantime, the Doctor was sitting down and basically having a smoke. Meanwhile, he's being watched by Kal, and Kal then sees, the Doctor, having the smoke coming out of his pipe, and Kal then captures the Doctor and takes him to the tribe. Cal, with the tribe, tried to get the doctor to make them fire, and Cal says to the doctor if he doesn't make them fire, then he'll be killed. Thankfully for the doctor, Ian, Barbara, and Susan came by to try and save him. However, to an extent they failed because all four of them ended up being captured and taken to the Cave of Skulls, which I guess to an extent is kind of the Stone Age equivalent of jail, I guess. I don't know. Meanwhile, a older cave person, which had no official name, they just referred to her as the Old Woman. She, unlike everybody else in the tribe, she sees fire as a bad thing for the tribe. She thinks it'll bring them death. So, she has them escape the Cave of Skulls, hoping that they wouldn't make fire for the tribe. So then the doctor, Ian, Barbara, and Susan then escape and try to get back to the TARDIS. However, Za and her go after them, and of course eventually they were captured and brought back to the tribe. Meanwhile, there was a case going on with the tribe that after the Old Woman left the TARDIS crew free, she was murdered. And Cal was, putting blame on Za, saying that he was the one responsible for killing the Old Woman. But the doctor then comes by, looks at the knife that Za has, and shows the tribe saying, oh, there's no blood on this, meaning he did not kill her. And then he looks at the knife that Cal has and notices there is blood on it, and says, see, this one has blood. That means Cal is the killer. And eventually, after the doctor pretty much convinces the tribe that Cal was responsible for killing the Old Woman, everybody in the tribe pretty much kicks Cal out of the tribe, and pretty much things go back to normal, at least for the time being. And just when the TARDIS crew thought it would be okay for them to leave, nope, they once again get captured and put once again back into the Cave of Skulls, where they have to make fire. And while they were working on it, Ian was successful in finally making fire, which impresses Za. But unfortunately for Za, Cal ends up coming back into the cave, and him and Za had a fight, and then eventually Cal lost and ended up getting killed, and Za ended up being the winner. And afterwards, Ian then gives Za a burning torch, which then Za shows the tribe, and because of that, Za was officially made the leader of the tribe. The TARDIS crew once again were trying to figure out how to escape once again, while Susan came up with the idea that if she was to put a skull over a burning torch, it would appear alive to the Paleolithic people. And because of that, they left the cave, and as soon as the cave people saw the burning skulls, they were terrified, and that allowed the TARDIS crew to escape. Unfortunately for them, that didn't last very long, because one of the skulls ended up falling over. As soon as the tribe realized that it was fake and it was a trick, they realized that the TARDIS crew escaped, and they tried to go after them. But thankfully for our TARDIS crew, they were able to get back into the TARDIS and be able to escape the Stone Age time period and be able to move on elsewhere. So yeah, that was basically the plots of An Unearthly Child in a nutshell. So, what did I personally think about it? I think, overall it's pretty decent. Just a couple... excuse me. Just a couple things I want to point out, during the review. So, it was a 4-episode story. So, episode 1 was broadcasted on November 23rd of 1963. However, the premiere of that episode was overshadowed by the fact that the day earlier, they announced, the assassination of American President John F. Kennedy, which, the ratings for the first episode when it first came out were not that high. Thankfully, they repeated the episode the week later on November 30th, and of course that was when episode 2 came out. And then the serial ended on December 14th of 1963, and yeah, it was a 4-episode story with each episode running at approximately 25 minutes, so basically we're looking at an hour and a half of screen time. And Yeah, that's basically the information about, like, how the show was like when it first aired. Now on to the actual quality of the episodes. Episode 1 of the story I thought was well done. I think it was like a great introduction to the 4 main characters. Definitely in the scene where, like, Ian and Barbara were investigating the junkyard, it makes you, like, wonder, like, more about, like, who Susan is, why she's in a junkyard to begin with. And, of course, as soon as, Ian and Barbara eventually get into what would become the TARDIS, they were all shocked because, how bigger it was on the inside compared to the outside. And even the audience, probably back then, was like, what? So, yeah, that definitely, I would say, yeah, the first episode was definitely, like, a great introduction to what would eventually become, like, Doctor Who. And as for the other 3 episodes, I kind of think they're okay at best. They honestly didn't really do much for me, especially compared to the first episode, like, but anyways, but overall, I do think it was a pretty enjoyable story. The characters themselves, I think the Doctor was, pretty much portrayed pretty well. I noticed in some areas, he kind of takes, like, the back seat sometimes when it comes to the plot of the caveman portion of the story. It was sort of more geared towards, I don't know, like, Ian and the others, I guess, during that. And as for Ian and Barbara, I think they're pretty much well portrayed, especially Barbara. Ian, I would probably say, kind of seems a bit, like, too authoritarian, I guess, wanting to be in charge of everything. Yeah, that part kind of threw me off. I know I've probably said this in my original, William Hartnell era episode of Doctor Who way back in season 1, but I do generally like Ian. And of course, as the show went on, I do like his character more and more, but yeah, in the first story, yeah, he wasn't portrayed the best, but, he wasn't portrayed bad either. Like, he was just, he was there. Susan, unfortunately, not the best portrayed. Like, she got, like, when the other 3 found out that the Doctor, like, got kidnapped, she freaked out, not in the best way possible. Like, she's like, "Oh, grandfather, where are you?" And then, like, I was just like, geez, like, she's supposed to be the same species as the Doctor, and yet she, I don't know. Yeah, honestly, like, out of all the 4 main characters, I think, like, Susan was my least favorite. Probably because of the way she was written. So, yeah, that's kind of what I have to say about Susan. And as for the caveman characters, I don't really have much to say about them. They're kind of like the, the way they talk, it's sort of like, the typical caveman thing, like, "Oh, I make fire," and all that stuff. But, the story as a whole, I think is, pretty fine. It's watchable. It's only 4 episodes, so it's not like a tough watch through. And yeah, I definitely think you would get some enjoyment out of it, especially in episode 1. So if I was to give an Unearthly Child a score, I would overall give it a 7 out of 10. So that was about it for my review of the very first Doctor Who story, An Unearthly Child. So if you guys have seen this story, what do you think about it? Feel free to let me know in the comments. And also, this will be a thing that I'll do every now and then in a Cave from England. I'll be reviewing Doctor Who stories. So yeah, if you guys are Doctor Who fans, let me know in the comments down below which Doctor Who story you want me to see do a review of in a future episode. Now, there is one rule to this, though. Seeing that I've so far only covered everything from William Hartnell to Peter Davison, and of course, the next couple episodes later, I'll be doing a look at the Colin Baker era. I will only be accepting requests for, like, stories from, like, between the William Hartnell to Colin Baker era. So that'll be anything from the Daleks all the way up till Trial of a Time Lord. So let me know in the comments which Doctor Who story you want me to see do a review of next time, and I'll probably do it. Or if you want me to see me do the Doctor Who stories in chronological order, I'll be perfectly okay with that too. Let me know in the comments down below of that as well. But with that being said, that's about it. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more episodes of It Came From England and just mediocre plush content in general. Leave a comment down below letting me know what you think. That's about it. This is Tyler from the Character Workshop, signing out. Next time, I'm going to be taking a look at what a lot of people consider to be like the worst cook on YouTube. But is she really the worst? Stay tuned and find out.